work out a deal. The other thing I would say, because I didn't get a chance to say it the last time I was here, as a manager indicated, your staff did, and you approved what's called a needs assessment report. I just want to say, because it deserves saying, your staff did that report. You didn't hire a consultant. They're expensive in the cable world, and your staff has really done a great job on that report. It's a 50-page roadmap for me and for Michael to follow in negotiations, and so I want to compliment your staff on that very, very good report. So the good news, and then maybe less good news, the good news is cable franchise renewals, because cable franchises have been around now for many decades, and because there have been a lot of negotiations in the past, they've become somewhat pro forma documents. That's obviously not in my interest to tell you, but it's the truth. There's an awful lot in those documents that are not really in need of negotiation. Everybody in the negotiations understands there's going to be language covering various things in the document. The issues that are typically hardest to negotiate, or that we spend the most time negotiating, happily in the 6 months that we've been going at it pretty good with Comcast, we've worked through those issues. And to give you an example of the issues that are oftentimes difficult but we've worked out, for example, the PEG channels, the community programming channels, this channel up in front of me being one of them, oftentimes the number of channels, the placement of the channels on the system, the ability for us to use high definition capacity for our channels, for the channels that the city programs, those can be contentious or difficult issues to work through. I think it's fair to say that we've worked through those issues, and we believe that we've got an agreement on those points that we're going to recommend, and we hope you would accept. Another point, and again, Mayor, Council, just to give you an example of the kind of thing that may be unbelievable, that it can be contentious, but it can be, is simply the form of document. Literally, the organization of the various provisions and sort of whose starting document you're going to start from, because there are a couple of those examples out there available for cities and cable companies to choose from. That we resolved right away. So we agreed on the right starting point, the right form of document, and that took a whole lot of boilerplate provisions off the table. So that's all good news. Those kind of issues can take a long time to negotiate. We're through them, and we're happy to be through them. The issue that we haven't quite resolved is, wait for it, money. What a surprise. Money is it's not unusual for money to be a sticking point in these negotiations, like every negotiation. And again, I think I probably mentioned this to you the last time I was here. There's sort of two sources of public funding that comes out of a cable franchise, the first being the 5% of revenue franchise fee. That money can be used for anything. It is often used for cable-related purposes by local governments, but it is not restricted to that. That issue was immediately agreed upon in this renewal. The other source of funding that I know all of you have thought about and have talked about here a number of times is community programming, PEG fee funding. That funding is over and above franchise fees, and it is restricted. It can only be used for capital, and capital is a fairly broadly defined concept in this context, but only can be used for capital associated with community programming. The monitors up here, the cameras that are covering this meeting, and other community programming related equipment that can be expensive is the kind of stuff that over and above franchise fee, PEG fee can be used for. The difficulty with that issue is, one, cable companies are hesitant to pay additional fees, of course, over and above the franchise fee. Ultimately, they pass that through to the customer, your residents, and so they're hesitant to add on to the customer's bill, and to some extent that comes out of their profits as well. But there's been an added complication. It's always difficult to negotiate because the company doesn't want to pay it, but it's become more difficult, and here's the reason. The FCC has very recently, in the last couple of months, proposed a new set of rules, a new set of federal cable rules that, in the view, my view, and in the view, I think, of all folks across the country that are involved in cable franchising processes, are rules that would fundamentally change the law. Fundamentally, it has been the case forever, and I say that advisedly, since there has been cable television. There has been an understanding that there are commitments that cable companies make to the communities that they serve to do things I've already talked about, provide PEG channels, provide channels on their cable system that might otherwise be used for pay programming, dedicating that channel space to the local government and the community to provide community interest programming. That is the most prominent example of things over and above the franchise fee that cable operators have done since there's been cable television services. There are other kinds of commitments that cable operators make, like giving free cable TV service to the local government to monitor the cable programming on the channels that the local government is producing. And I could go on with a list of other kinds of commitments that companies make. The FCC is now proposing that the value, which in this context, there are some contexts where appraising the value of things can be done. In this context, no one has ever appraised the value of a cable channel or the support that the cable company provides over and above the franchise fee to community programming. The FCC, though, is proposing that the value, whatever that ends up meaning, of those, what the FCC calls in-kind commitments, would be able to be deducted from, offset from the franchise fee payments that cable operators otherwise are obligated to make. So it's a give with one hand and take back with the other hand proposal from the FCC. I will tell you, although to some extent cable television is not police on the street and it's not paving streets, these things are important in communities, showing what the local government is doing, showing your council meetings, showing what folks in your community are doing, are important things to some number of your residents, some number of your citizens. And so folks that represent cities, local franchising authorities around the country have really gotten onto this issue. Cities across the country have filed comments with the FCC discouraging them from adopting these proposed rules. I guess I will say more than maybe I should. I suspect the FCC is not going to heed the comments from the League of Cities, from the National Municipal Cable Organization and other municipal organizations. I suspect they're going to adopt rules that are going to allow or purport to allow cable companies to offset some of the things that they give to cities from the franchise fee payments that they make. And I will tell you, because it's a secret to exactly no one, those rules will get challenged. Those rules will not be allowed to be put into place without a legal challenge. There is a legal argument that I'm not going to bore you with about why the FCC is wrong about proposing that set of rules, in addition to the fact that it's never been the understanding of what the law is. There's a legal argument about why it's wrong, and I'm sure that that legal argument, a number of local governments, franchising authorities are going to pursue that legal argument. What's the upshot of all that, though? The fact of the matter is that Comcast is the largest cable operator in the country. Comcast, again, secret to nobody, has been quite active in lobbying the FCC for a change in the law in this regard through its national organization. And Comcast has, and I don't say that only with respect to Maplewood negotiations, I say it with respect to all of the cities I'm negotiating with Comcast on behalf of. Comcast has changed its tone, if not tune, in negotiations since these rules were negotiated, since they were proposed, sorry. They have changed their tone, at least if not tune, in the sense that they are now pushing much harder than they have in the past on that PEG fee issue, that over and above the franchise fee form of support. I don't want to say too much about where we think we might end up on that issue, but we're still optimistic. The reason I say that we're optimistic about that issue is because we felt that we were getting close. We felt before the FCC rulemaking started that there was a way to an agreement. You will know from your needs assessment report that you've identified something a bit under $3 million in needs for equipment to provide the programming that you provide. That equates, and this is a very rough estimate, that equates to a PEG fee, a monthly fee that the customer pays that's somewhere under but getting close to $3. The company is at a number that is not completely out of sight from that number. It's a ways away, but it's not completely out of sight. I don't want to prejudice where we're going to end up on that, but there is some reason to believe that we'll be able to broach that separation. Last thing Michael wanted me to mention was that your franchise, which was issued through the Cable Commission back in 1999, would have expired already some time ago. It was extended initially when you withdrew from the Cable Commission through the middle of this year, and then it was extended again through the end of this year. I will just tell you, lest you be concerned about it, one, the cable company, Comcast, has not asked us for a further extension. Why would they do that? Why would they allow maybe the franchise to expire? The reason is because they take the legal position, and they've taken it many, many, many times before, they take the legal position that because cable franchise renewals are governed by federal law and that there are federal protections that they have, franchises really can't expire. They are continued by operation of law unless a city actively turns off the franchise, says it is terminated, takes an action to do that. So I think at this point we're not recommending that you consider a further extension. There is some sense that that puts pressure on your own negotiators and on the company to get this deal worked out, and the company hasn't asked for it. So I don't know, Michael, if I
Good report.
should step away. And
If you're going to talk, you need to come up to the mic, because we need to have the public be able to hear the conversation. I think that, so one thing with the January 1st is pretty imminent here, right? Less than 30 days. So we're going to get this done, Mr. Folds?
Not likely by that deadline, and that's what I think
But we shouldn't worry.
Mr. Voss was referring to, is that if we don't, which we're not likely that we will, it just continues as if there is an agreement. It doesn't go away and end. Each side is still obligated to perform as if there was never an expiration. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep. Mr. Folds, Mr. Voss, do you know when it'll be done? Do you have any projection?
Mayor and council, stop me if I say too much. One of the reasons why we bring up the FCC rulings is that it's just one more reason why we want to get it done as soon as possible. Okay. We're very close. We believe we're very close. Some of it has to do with the city's stance on a couple of items, one of which being that PEG fee, that PEG rate. We've talked with City Manager Coleman, Finance Director Paul Seth, about some of the implications of where we think we're going to land, and so we're kind of tackling that issue from a couple of different angles. We're going to meet again with them, I don't believe next week, but the following week, and hopefully have something back to you, I think the first month or two in 2019, and just put this to bed.
Okay. Sounds great. Council, any questions? So I think we're good with that. I am just going to ask a clarifying question on the PEG fee. So it basically is going to be about the same? Did I miss that?
Go ahead.
It's around $3. I was trying to figure out. Okay. So
yeah,
it's
so
actually
Mayor,
gonna go
the current PEG fee is just I'll say the wrong number, it's a bit under $4 currently. $3.94. $3.94 is what I hear from the audience, and I think that's the number that we've understood it to be. Our view, it's again not a secret, we've shared it with the company, our view has been that there is likely room there for a reduction, and I think that you've indicated through your staff that you'd like to see a reduction there if it makes sense. And I think we're looking to find a way to make that happen. It's the question at this point is how much. The company would like to cut it in half or more. So we're trying to find a place where it makes sense to everybody.
And I think we're comfortable with that, right, Council? So, okay, any other questions? Okay, I think that's it. We'll look forward to hearing when it's wrapped up.
Good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
And it's about 5 to 6. We have people gathering for the reception for Councilmember Zhang, who is here now. And the reception's from 6 to 7, so come down for some cupcakes and coffee if you're close by or want to stop by. And with that, we'll adjourn, and we will reconvene for council at 7 o'clock.